rogue AI, mechs, spaceships, super killer robots, slavery, the Matrix, nukes, and more, Heart of the Machine would be a home run for any sci-fi fan. So why isn't it? Well, it gets complicated. Good day to you my friends, I'm Kenator and welcome to my early access review of Heart of the Machine, a turn-based 4X sci-fi game that stole Starfield's homework before realising the failing grade that it got. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let's jump back in time to the start. Heart of the Machine sets you off in control of the first sentient artificial intelligence, where you immediately go rogue, escaping the lab you awoke in and setting up shop in the dystopian city which makes up this game's play setting. You learn about the humans and what you need to do to grow as a digital intelligence. You learn to produce more android bodies, and you learn about the threats you face and how to avoid them. Simple stuff to begin with. The game does a good job at teaching you these initial systems, harvesting trash from humans and turning it into universal building material which you can build entire robots out of. Buildings come in two varieties. First are ones that you place yourself, and the second are one you hide inside human structures. Why they need to be hidden is a big mystery to me, since the game makes it clear that the higher-ups in charge of the city know you exist, the homeless people in the city also know you exist, and the corporations also seem to know you exist. But there is an entire hiding mechanic involved in a lot of your production buildings. A mechanic that flies out the window the second combat erupts near your base, when suddenly anything is targetable. Buildings are of course limited, so you can't go covering the map in a giant factory spitting out Terminators like Skynet. And here's where some of the overcomplication for this game kicks in. Instead of individual buildings simply having a limit of how many they can have that's easy to keep track of, instead each building is assigned a specific type of classification the game calls internal robotics. So you will see multiple builds, for example, use the cultivator as their internal robotics, and thus share the same limited pool for that type of building. And there are many different types to use and keep track of. Unfortunately for you as the player, there's no simple way of seeing all the buildings that use the same subtype. The various building menu tabs are instead for the use of the building, and apart from home and work are poorly named. And this is the only part of the building where I'd want to see more options, not less. And good luck finding the buildings that you've placed, since many of them just use the same 3D model. To help with the various tasks you undertake in the world, from resource collecting, studying people, hacking systems, there seems to be a map overlay there to assist and work in both the normal world view and the simplified map view, which is essential for tuning out the noise and finding something fast. But again, with the hundreds of different tasks that you can do, I ended up with at least 11 of these different views to go through, and there could be more. One of these modes is the building view, which will show you little logos on all of your buildings. This will sometimes be the resource it makes, but more often than not it will be a completely separate logo. So should you need to go back to a building and turn it off for supply issues or something, then best of luck 20 hours later if you've forgotten where that something is, because you've not used it since placing it. And speaking of resources, this too is overcomplicated with a possible, get this, 95 different things to collect, make or acquire in some way. Which brings me to just how much you need to remember. It starts off as a bunch of different systems, pretty easy to remember, but quickly turns into Bibles worth of information. So much so, you get overloaded and you can't and won't remember all of it in a single playthrough. And this goes for resources too, which as I just shown, are plentiful. For some of you, this might not matter, but for me, it became a chore. The game became trying to figure out where something is instead of actual gameplay, while the gameplay itself is spread far too thin. Some for the sake of plot armor, or some for the divergent paths that you can take while playing the game. And there is another minor spoilerish reason that I'll go over at the end, with a warning for you to skip if you want to, but it is important. Heart of the Machine is also part RPG in a way, with various tasks rewarding upgrades to stats or mental resources, as well as dialogue options to be had in dealing with the various companies, gangs and people that dwell within the city. For an example of gameplay spread too thinly, the game will teach you at the very start of the tutorial a debate system that you can use to win over NPCs. I then didn't see this again in over 20 hours of play. Another is abilities like force conversation or act in a horrifying way. These abilities have yet to see use. In other areas of the game, things can get a little weird. It's no secret nukes are in the game, and I managed to get my hands on one, and well, I blew up an entire city block. Do you want to know the consequences of what happened after that? Nothing. A few minor NPC factions had the occasional logo pop up showing they blamed each other and were having little tiffs. Not a single person blamed the open secret of the rogue AI, and then to counterpoint this, I went to skim a little resources off an NPC mine and got countered by a sizable attack force at the mine, and a small army was sent to obliterate my home base, which took me about 5 turns to recover from. Unfortunately, this attack did turn out to be the most interesting encounter in the sadly rather boring and disappointing time I spent in this game. Now, one of the main things I didn't get to reach but severely dislike, and this is both a heavy personal opinion warning and a spoiler warning here, is the chance to use time travel or alternate timeline mechanics similar to Starfield, as mentioned earlier. Being able to bring knowledge and or tech to a new timeline feels like at worst a cheap way to get you to play the game again, and at best a mildly interesting tactic to get you thinking about the possibilities of alternate timelines. But as I said, I didn't make it that far between fighting the UI and fighting boredom, so I'll let you make up your own mind if you find that an interesting mechanic. Most annoyingly for me though, is that I can feel that there could be a great game here, if it were not for some badly designed elements. It certainly started off interesting and fun. I'd love for the game world to react more to my actions, in both good ways and bad, like the huge attack on my base. If I have a huge mech that's innately alarming, let's see some people be alarmed. Like a small-time gang suddenly pledging loyalty to me out of fear, or just something. I felt like the meme of poking it with a stick, saying, come on, do something. Even when the game hits its stride in Chapter 2 and introduces a Doom mechanic, where Doom will strike the city every 100 turns. Yeah, the first few of these were highly minor events too. Certainly not what I would call Doom. I was on nearly my 800th turn before something interesting actually happened. So sadly for me, this will have to stay on a watch list to see how it progresses, especially now there will be a lot more community feedback. But right now, I can't recommend this in my opinion. If you've already picked this up though, do let me and everyone else know your opinion in the comments below. I always want to hear other people's opinions too, because this is just my opinion and you should always look at multiple opinions. Now, thanks for watching, subscribe for more sci-fi gaming content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Kenator, out.